Content warning. Dear friends, before we continue, please remember that the following stories, confessions, and testimonies are solely for entertainment purposes only. None of these stories are realistic, factual, and reflective of the past and current events in our society, and what's coming for us in the future. For the most accurate information, please refer to official reports and news from mainstream media and government institutions. Thank you. In May 1995, the Washington Post reported that 12-year-old Prince William had a microchip surgically implanted in his right hand, allegedly to allow his location to be tracked anywhere on the planet in the event of an abduction. Some Christians believe this could signify the mark of the beast. Years later, in April 2008, Prince William was inducted into the Most Noble Order of the Garter, the world's oldest surviving order of chivalry. This order, often associated with secrecy and elite influence, has been described by some as the Queen's hidden Illuminati society and the parent organization to Freemasonry. On April 29, 2011, William and Kate Middleton were married, exactly 66 years to the day after Hitler wed Eva Braun. With 3 children and their marriage appearing stronger than ever by 2020, William and his smiling, picture-perfect family seemed poised for a prominent future, according to what some call the unholy destiny's plan. But who truly orchestrates this narrative? Lucifer or God? On the surface, the answer may seem clear, yet many believe that ultimately God holds the reins. Amid ongoing scandals and a waning public perception of the crown, Queen Elizabeth has seemingly concluded that the survival of the British monarchy hinges on a figure as popular and benign as Prince William ascending the throne. As the 1,000th knight in the Order of the Garter since its inception in 1348, some speculate that William has spent his life being groomed for a role as the wolf in sheep's clothing. In this narrative, the New World Order, NWO, purportedly deems him the perfect candidate to be their chosen leader, and, according to some, the Antichrist. Kate Middleton's family history also adds layers of intrigue. Her mother's maiden name is Goldsmith, a detail that ties her lineage to notable figures of power and wealth. In October 2017, her younger brother Gary Goldsmith made headlines for a scandalous incident. At 52 years old, Gary knocked his wife unconscious in front of a shocked taxi driver after a celebrity auction in London. Both were reportedly intoxicated at the time. Julianne, his 4th wife, had to be rushed to the hospital. Gary was subsequently charged with assault by beating, fined £5,000, and given a 12-month community order in November of that year. This incident revealed even more about Gary's lifestyle, marked by cocaine use, fast cars, and parties at his Ibiza mansion, Maison de Bang Bang. In 2006, Prince William and Kate spent a holiday at this infamous villa, valued at $8.25 million. An article in the Evening Standard referred to Gary Goldsmith as the family's black sheep, describing him as a pimp and drug dealer who lives in a house called Maison de Bang Bang. The scandals surrounding the extended royal family are not limited to drug use or violence. Allegations of pedophilia have long cast a shadow over Buckingham Palace, described by critics as the epicenter of a vast network of child sexual abuse that extends across the 54 Commonwealth nations and beyond. Many members of the royal household have reportedly been connected to such allegations, either directly or through their associations. One of the most infamous figures linked to the royal family was Anthony Blunt, a cousin to the Queen and a longtime royal art curator. Blunt was revealed to be a traitor, pedophile, and alleged visitor to the notorious Elm Guest House, a known hub of child sexual exploitation. He wasn't alone. Other palace staff members, including senior aide Richard Langley and Commander Michael Trestrail, the Queen's lead bodyguard, were also implicated. Trestrail resigned after admitting to a homosexual relationship with a male prostitute, though some speculate his involvement in deeper scandals led to his departure. The royal service staff has also faced allegations of being dominated by a so-called gay mafia, some members of which are alleged to have engaged in abusive behavior. For over 50 years, William Tallon, known as Backstairs Billy, served as a confidant to the Queen Mother while reportedly hosting gay orgies, abusing younger staff, and even bringing underage boys to the palace for tours. Similarly, Michael Fawcett, a trusted aide to Prince Charles, was known for his authoritarian behavior toward junior staff. Beyond individual scandals, some argue that this culture stems from the monarchy itself. A New Statesman article noted, "There is a mafia at work at the palace, but it's the queens, not the queens." Such insights suggest a systemic issue rooted in power dynamics and a sense of being above the law. These allegations extend to influential political figures, with some connected to the monarchy's inner circle. For instance, Peter Morrison, a known pedophile and parliamentary private secretary to Margaret Thatcher, had close familial ties to the Queen through his sister, Mary Ann Morrison, who served as the Queen's lady-in-waiting for over half a century. On the tax haven of Jersey, child abuse scandals at the Eau de la Garenne Children's Home have been linked to VIPs, including former Prime Minister Edward Heath and Jimmy Savile. The investigation into the abuse was reportedly sabotaged by Queen-appointed officials like Sir Philip and William Bailhache, who held key positions of power on the island. These brothers, among others, have been accused of obstructing justice to protect prominent figures. The monarchy's connections to such scandals, along with its deep ties to secret societies and elite networks, continue to fuel speculation about its true role in global affairs. For some, these narratives suggest a darker purpose behind the carefully curated public image of the House of Windsor. Despite an independent Jersey Care inquiry, only a fraction of offenders, approximately 5%, involved in the scandal have been publicly identified, and only a small number have faced conviction. Many perpetrators of child abuse have escaped accountability, leaving a legacy of unanswered questions. The Jersey scandal has raised concerns about systemic failures in justice, with some critics suggesting connections to influential figures and institutions, including the monarchy. Wilfred Kraszewski, a prominent figure known as the Fat Man, was reportedly linked to Princess Alexandra of Kent and her husband, Sir Angus Ogilvy. Additionally, individuals such as Jimmy Savile and former Prime Minister Edward Heath have been implicated in allegations of misconduct on Jersey. Patterns of alleged abuse at locations like Jersey and the Duncroft-approved school in Surrey have led to suspicions of broader systemic issues. One troubling case involves George Thomas, a long-serving Welsh Labour MP and former Speaker of the House of Commons, later titled Viscount Tony Pandy. Despite his public reputation, allegations emerged posthumously that he had abused a child during the 1960s and 1970s. Reports suggest the allegations were overlooked due to his close association with the monarchy and his significant political influence. When Thomas passed away in 1997, the Queen praised his public service, but his alleged victim continued to seek justice, with police issuing an apology for inaction only decades later. In another case, Peter Bick, a friend of Prince Philip with shared interests in carriage racing, was tragically killed by Christopher Honeysett in 2011. Honeysett, who had endured years of abuse by his vicar as a child, was acquitted of the vicar's murder in 2010 after new evidence revealed the extent of his trauma. Upon release, Honeysett targeted individuals he suspected of being abusers, though no concrete evidence was presented linking Bick to any wrongdoing. Paul Kidd, who served as butler to the Queen and Queen Mother during the 1970s and 1980s, was convicted in 2008 of abusing minors over 3 decades. Kidd exploited his royal connections to groom his victims, even taking one to Christmas tea at Clarence House. Police discovered a significant cache of explicit material in his possession. His actions, which appeared to involve an organized network, went undetected for years. Earlier reports from the 1970s also suggested the existence of a similar network within the royal household. A teenage staff member employed at Buckingham Palace wrote a note describing his experience as exploitation of the highest order. Despite the boy's family seeking help from MP Geoffrey Dickens, their concerns were dismissed by then Home Secretary Leon Britton. This incident and others highlight repeated failures to investigate allegations of abuse effectively. In 2015, a viral video purportedly showing a young man escaping from Buckingham Palace sparked speculation. Although mainstream media outlets labeled it a hoax, some questioned the explanations provided considering the history of misconduct reported within royal circles. Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Herman, who served as Prince Philip's equerry from 1971 to 1974, was charged in 2014 with sexually assaulting a minor. Other individuals connected to the monarchy, such as entertainer Rolf Harris, were later convicted of abuse. Harris, who had previously been honored with a royal commission to paint the Queen's portrait, was stripped of his knighthood following his conviction. In November 2015, Roger Benson, a 77-year-old who had been involved in prominent work with Prince Charles's Youth Business Trust charity, was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison for sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl nearly 3 decades earlier. Shortly after Benson was appointed as Director of Operations in Northern Ireland for the Trust, a role focused on assisting disadvantaged youth, he began abusing a local girl. At the time, the victim's attempts to report the abuse were dismissed, as it was her word against that of an influential charity leader. It wasn't until 2014, amid a wave of reports regarding historic child abuse, that the victim's account was taken seriously, leading to Benson's guilty plea and conviction. In court, the victim shared the enduring impact of the abuse, stating, "I feel dirty, damaged, ashamed, and rubbish." Benson's actions highlight the profound and lasting harm inflicted by such crimes. During this period, the trust was overseen by Sir Harold Heywood, a long-serving royal charity aide who faced criticism for his affiliations. As head of the Albany Trust in 1975, Heywood endorsed materials produced in collaboration with the controversial Pedophile Information Exchange, PI, which sought to downplay the risks posed by pedophiles. Despite such troubling connections, Heywood was honored with an OBE in 1973 and later knighted in 1988 for his charitable work. These honors have raised concerns about the scrutiny applied to individuals in such influential roles. Another concerning case involves Hubert Cheshire, a heraldic officer and author who served the monarchy for over 40 years. In 2015, Cheshire was found by a jury in a trial of the facts to have sexually abused a teenage chorister in the 1990s. Despite this, he faced no formal conviction due to claims of ill health, including a stroke and dementia. None of Cheshire's numerous honorary titles or memberships were revoked, and he continued to enjoy an unblemished reputation. This case has drawn comparisons to that of Lord Greville Janner, who similarly avoided prosecution for alleged abuse due to health issues before his death in 2015. The royal household has faced other instances of abuse allegations involving staff members. Alwyn Stockdale, a chauffeur to Queen Elizabeth II from 1972 to 1992, sexually assaulted two young boys in the 1970s. One incident occurred in his Buckingham Palace living quarters, while the other took place at the home of another palace employee. Despite admitting to these crimes decades later, Stockdale died in 2018, shortly before legal proceedings could be initiated, effectively escaping justice. In June 2018, Tony Aslett, a 52-year-old visitor services warden at Buckingham Palace, received a 9-month prison sentence for possessing over 15,000 indecent images and videos of children, some as young as 18 months old. This collection was amassed between 2009 and 2015. In July 2019, Andrew Lightwood, a 57-year-old former butler to the Queen, was sentenced to 28 months in prison for sexually assaulting a young boy. The boy's mother reported lasting psychological trauma for her son, despite receiving counseling. Robert Coughlin, a 54-year-old Foreign Office diplomat and linguist, received a 3-year prison sentence in September 1996 for smuggling 109 videotapes of obscene material, 70 of which were child pornography. Authorities suspected he was part of a larger network operating within the diplomatic service. Trevor Francis, a 71-year-old retired Scottish railway station master, received an MBE from the Queen and Prince Charles in 2012 for his community service. However, he was later convicted in 2017 of sexually assaulting vulnerable children in the 1970s and received a 9-month prison sentence. Following the conviction, his MBE was revoked. In February 2012, Christopher Exley, a 33-year-old Metropolitan Police officer assigned to the Special Operations Division, responsible for royal protection, was caught possessing indecent images of children. While pleading guilty, he avoided jail time. Another on-duty police officer from the Royalty and Special Protection Police, Andrew Daly, was accused of soliciting a 16-year-old girl at a royal event. Despite admitting misconduct, he reportedly retained his position. In November 2012, David Tracy, a 48-year-old Home Office chief responsible for security at Buckingham Palace and other royal residences, was arrested, dismissed, and received a community order, a sex offenses prevention order, and a fine for possessing 90,000 indecent images and videos of children. He avoided prison time. In July 2006, Nicholas Greaves, a 33-year-old former royal footman and later servant to King Abdullah of Jordan, was sentenced to 2 years in prison for possessing over 450 indecent photos and 15 films of children, some depicting torture. In July 2015, Dr. Stephen Palmer, a 68-year-old former chaplain to the Queen, received a 39-month prison sentence for sexually assaulting a minor in the 1970s. Patrick Gilbert, the Oxford-educated Secretary-General of the Society for Promoting Christian Knowledge, SPCK, from 1971 to 1991, and a close friend of the Queen, was convicted of sexually assaulting a boy over several years. Despite a prior conviction, he received a suspended sentence in 1991 due to a reported heart condition. The details of this case have been difficult to verify due to the apparent removal of online information. Jonathan Rhys Williams, the Queen's former organist and choirmaster, was sentenced in August 2004 to 5 years and 3 months in prison for numerous sexual assaults against children in the 1970s and 1980s, as well as possession of indecent images. Retired Royal Navy Lieutenant Commander Douglas Slade, who once prepared the Queen's meals on the Royal Yacht Britannia, was convicted in 2016 of numerous sex crimes against children committed between 1965 and 1980 and sentenced to 24 years in prison. The varying sentences in these cases raise concerns about inconsistencies in judicial responses to child sexual abuse and the potential influence of connections to powerful individuals. The apparent lack of transparency surrounding some of these cases, particularly the difficulty in verifying information about Patrick Gilbert, warrants further investigation. The use of charitable organizations as potential cover for such crimes also deserves attention. Several cases involving individuals with alleged connections to the British royal family highlight serious allegations of child sexual abuse. It is crucial to remember that these are individual incidents and do not necessarily reflect the actions or knowledge of the entire royal family. The information below is based on publicly available reports and court records and should not be considered definitive proof of a systemic cover-up. The accounts presented here may contain inconsistencies or unverified details. In one instance, Tom Herman, a 48-year-old Royal Navy commander and harbor master, was arrested on charges related to possessing indecent images of underage girls. He was acquitted of all charges. In late August 2011, Simon Davies, a 37-year-old Royal Guardsman, and his wife, Fiona Parsons Davies, a 44-year-old primary school teacher, were arrested for allegedly raping a girl under 13 and sharing recordings online. The arrests led to suspicions of a larger pedophile ring within the Royal Protection Force. Stephen Salmon, a 72-year-old former Royal Marines Chief Warrant Officer, was convicted of sexually assaulting a young girl multiple times in the 1970s. He received additional prison time after further victims came forward. Wayne Dominy, a 51-year-old former paratrooper, was sentenced to 17 years in prison for 13 child sex crimes. Media coverage emphasized his alleged interactions with members of the royal family, though the extent of these interactions remains unclear. Reginald Forrester Smith, a photographer who worked with members of the royal family, was convicted in 1999 of sexually abusing his 2 daughters and another girl over many years. His will, leaving a substantial sum to charities, became a point of contention for his victims. The connection to the Girl Guides organization, where his victim's mother volunteered, raised concerns about potential opportunities for abuse. The cases highlighted here represent only a fraction of the allegations and convictions involving individuals in official capacities connected to the British royal family. Despite the gravity of these crimes, there appears to be a pattern where only junior or lower-level staff members face significant legal consequences, while higher-ranking individuals often evade accountability. This discrepancy raises concerns about institutional leniency and protection afforded to those in positions of privilege and influence. For example, Prince Charles's long-standing associations with controversial figures have drawn scrutiny. Michael Colvin, a member of Parliament and an associate of Prince Charles, was implicated in corruption and the North Wales child abuse scandal. Allegations against Colvin included links to individuals involved in covering up abuse, although these claims remain unproven. Another notable instance occurred during the 2012 Diamond Jubilee pageant. Harbinder Singh Rana, a convicted offender who had posed as a doctor to commit sexual assaults on children in the 1980s, was invited to join the royal celebration on the barge Spirit of Chartwell. Rana's prior conviction came to light only after the event, prompting Clarence House to issue a statement that, had they been aware of his history, he would not have been included on the guest list. Prince Charles's association with Bishop Peter Ball further illustrates concerns about his choice of acquaintances. Ball, a prominent member of the Church of England, maintained a close friendship with Charles for decades, despite facing accusations of child sexual abuse as early as the 1990s. In 1993, Ball admitted to an act of gross indecency with a teenage boy and was issued a police caution rather than being prosecuted. This leniency has been attributed to Ball's influential connections, including those with the royal family. Despite receiving the caution, Ball continued to engage in predatory behavior for years. Some victims have alleged that Ball boasted about his royal connections to intimidate them. When Ball was finally convicted in 2015 for sexually abusing multiple young men, questions arose about the extent of support he received from influential allies, including members of the royal family. Clarence House maintained that Prince Charles was unaware of Ball's misconduct, despite their decades-long relationship. These incidents, while individually distinct, collectively highlight the importance of transparency, accountability, and rigorous vetting processes for those connected to high-profile institutions. Ensuring that justice is applied equally to all individuals, regardless of their position or connections, is essential to maintaining public trust in both the monarchy and its associated institutions. Peter Ball and his twin brother Michael founded the Community of the Glorious Ascension in 1960. Over the decades, allegations of abuse against Peter Ball were either ignored or met with inadequate responses, allowing him to rise through the ranks of the clergy, ultimately becoming Bishop of Lewes, and later Diocesan Bishop of Gloucester. Despite mounting evidence and numerous victims, action was delayed for years. Finally, in 2015, Ball pleaded guilty to abusing 18 young men and boys. However, his sentence, a mere 32 months in prison, was widely criticized as excessively lenient, sparking public outrage and prompting the Archbishop of Canterbury to order an investigation into the Church of England's handling of abuse cases. Archbishop Justin Welby later issued an apology, acknowledging the Church's failure to protect victims and admitting that it had prioritized the reputation of the institution over the welfare of survivors. The Church colluded and concealed rather than seeking to help those who were brave enough to come forward. Prince Charles's long-standing friendship with Peter Ball has also come under scrutiny. In 1994, a year after Ball received a police caution for gross indecency with a teenage boy, Charles wrote a letter expressing support for the disgraced bishop. He described his feelings of injustice on Ball's behalf, stating, "I wish I could do more. I feel so desperately strongly about the monstrous wrongs that have been done to you and the way you have been treated." Despite this, Ball continued his abusive behavior for years. Charles later claimed he was unaware of the nature of Ball's caution and insisted that he had been misled by the bishop. Documents submitted to the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, ICSA, in 2018 revealed that Charles had provided Ball with housing on his Duchy of Cornwall estate for over a decade, even after the 1993 caution. Ball's public support extended beyond the prince. In 1994, Queen Elizabeth herself reportedly expressed encouragement to Ball at an Anglican event. Critics argue that such public endorsements, combined with the Church's failure to act decisively, emboldened Ball to continue his predatory behavior. The royal family's connections to Ball raise further questions, especially in light of Charles's close association with other controversial figures, including Jimmy Savile. Savile, later revealed to be one of Britain's most prolific sexual predators, enjoyed unprecedented access to the royal family for decades. His ties to the royals began in the 1960s and included frequent invitations to royal residences. Savile's crimes went undetected during his lifetime, and his relationships with powerful figures shielded him from scrutiny. These associations have led to criticism of the vetting processes for individuals within royal circles and broader concerns about accountability among public figures. Victims and advocates have expressed frustration over the lack of transparency and justice, emphasizing the need for institutional reform to prevent future abuses. Public trust in institutions such as the monarchy and the Church of England hinges on their willingness to address these issues with integrity. Ensuring that justice is applied equally, regardless of status or influence, is essential to protecting the most vulnerable members of society. In 1966, Lord Louis Mountbatten introduced BBC DJ Jimmy Savile to Prince Philip, marking the beginning of Savile's long-standing association with the British royal family. Mountbatten, a favorite uncle of Prince Philip, appeared to recognize something in Savile that he believed would be of value to the royal circle. From that point on, Savile's connection to the monarchy grew significantly, ultimately granting him unprecedented access to the royal family. Savile, later revealed to be one of Britain's most notorious sexual predators, was known for his connections to high-profile figures, including politicians, entertainers, and even prime ministers. His nephew, Guy Marsden, claimed that Savile acted as a facilitator, supplying children to sex parties attended by the elite in London during the 1960s. In an Esquire interview, Savile himself cryptically boasted about his influence, stating, "The thing about me is I get things done and I work deep cover. I've known the royal family for 1,000,000 years." Savile's introduction into the royal fold was seamless, likely due to Mountbatten's endorsement. Reflecting on this connection, Savile once remarked, "Coming from Lord Louis, who was the favorite uncle of Prince Philip, that was quite something. So obviously I hooked up with the prince. What was good enough for Lord Louis was good enough for him." In the 1970s, Savile became acquainted with Prince Charles through shared charity work. Over time, their relationship deepened, with Savile reportedly becoming a trusted confidant to Charles throughout the 1980s. Some accounts even suggest that Savile was considered for the role of godfather to Prince Harry. During the turbulent later years of Charles and Diana's marriage, Savile served as an informal mediator. Diana's biographer, Andrew Morton, wrote, "Savile's opinions carry weight in both camps. He articulates opinions that courtiers can only think." Savile's involvement extended beyond Charles and Diana's marital issues. He also assisted the Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, in attempting to rehabilitate her public image during her marriage to Prince Andrew. Additionally, he persuaded Charles's siblings, Andrew and Anne, to appear on his long-running television show, Jim'll Fix It. Savile's pervasive influence over the royal family suggested a level of trust and access rarely granted to outsiders. Despite his public persona as a jovial entertainer, numerous allegations emerged after Savile's death in 2011, revealing his role in facilitating the abuse of vulnerable children. It was widely reported that Savile used his royal connections and charm to shield himself from scrutiny. According to palace staff, Savile often sought gossip about the royal family, possibly as leverage to protect himself. Regarding his silence about his royal ties, Savile once stated, "I'm the man who says nothing. Anything to do with matters royal is a no-go area." Savile's erratic and audacious behavior was often dismissed as part of his eccentric charm. For example, Dickie Arbiter, the royal press secretary from 1988 to 2000, recalled how Savile would visit St. James's Palace uninvited and make inappropriate advances toward female staff. Princess Diana's bodyguard, Ken Worf, also noted Savile's habit of showing up at Kensington Palace unannounced, claiming to be on a mission from Prince Charles. Savile later explained his royal acceptance, saying, "I have a freshness of approach which they obviously find to their liking. I think I get invited because I have a natural, good fun way of going on and we have a laugh." The extent of Savile's unchecked access to the royal family raised serious questions. Many observers now believe that Savile's value to the royals lay in his covert role as a facilitator, potentially providing a link between powerful figures and vulnerable individuals. Reports suggest that Savile exploited his connections to enable abuse within Britain's childcare system, with claims that children were trafficked to elite gatherings under the guise of charity work. In 1999, after years of frequent visits to royal residences and even spending 11 consecutive year-end holidays with the Thatcher family, Jimmy Savile hosted Prince Charles for dinner at his modest Scottish Highland home in Glencoe. The evening's entertainment featured 3 women dressed in pinafores, collarless, sleeveless dresses traditionally associated with young girls. These outfits, adorned only with the letters HRH, were an audacious gesture by the host, leaving a lasting impression. Prince Charles later wrote in his Christmas card that year, "Jimmy, with affectionate greetings from Charles, give my love to your ladies in Scotland." This raises uncomfortable questions about whether the ladies referenced were adults or victims of Savile's documented history of abuse at the very same cottage where he assaulted at least 20 children. The property, sold for double its asking price after his death, has since been left abandoned. During his final police interview in 2009, conducted under caution by Surrey Police, Savile made numerous references to his connections with the royal family. This bond seemingly provided him with an impenetrable shield against accountability. Astonishingly, the released transcript of the interview included 96 heavily redacted lines, ensuring all royal references were censored. Breaking standard protocol, the interview took place at Savile's home office within Stoke Mandeville Hospital, a site of numerous assaults, including claims of abuse against deceased patients. Savile's association with Duncroft-approved School for Girls also came under scrutiny. In his 1974 autobiography, he mentioned attending a garden party at the school with Princess Alexandra, a royal patron of the facility. He even admitted to having had inappropriate relationships with a 14-year-old runaway. Despite these revelations, no legal action was taken, reflecting a disturbing trend where his royal connections ensured protection. The Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, ultimately declined to prosecute Savile, not due to a lack of evidence, but because of his ties to the monarchy. This protection extended across police, security services, and the media, with royal privacy laws ensuring damaging information remained hidden. As a result, Savile died a celebrated figure, eulogized by public figures, including Prince Charles, who expressed his deep sadness over the DJ's death 2 days shy of his 85th birthday. Prince Charles relied heavily on Savile for personal and professional support, particularly during his tumultuous marriage to Princess Diana. The DJ was consulted on sensitive matters, including staff hiring and firing, speechwriting, and even public events. Savile's influence extended into the National Health Service, where he once threatened officials not to cross Charles, implying it could jeopardize their knighthoods. This dynamic reveals the extraordinary trust Charles placed in Savile, despite warnings from some royal advisors to distance himself from the controversial figure. Diana reportedly saw through Savile's manipulative persona, describing him as creepy, especially after an unsettling incident where he licked her hand. However, Charles continued to value Savile's support, viewing him as a confidant and mentor. Savile's role as a fixer for Charles highlighted their close bond, forged over decades of trust and mutual reliance. Savile's connections extended beyond royalty to prominent figures in religious institutions. He maintained close ties with Cardinal Keith O'Brien, who resigned in disgrace in 2013 following allegations of sexual misconduct. Additionally, he was a longtime associate of Church of England Bishop Peter Ball, who was later convicted of sexual offenses. These relationships suggest a troubling pattern of alignment between powerful figures with similarly dark reputations. For his 80th birthday, Prince Charles gifted Savile cigars and gold cufflinks, accompanied by a note that read, "Nobody will ever know what you have done for this country, Jimmy. This is to go some way in thanking you for that." The cryptic message highlights the extent to which Savile's influence and activities were shrouded in secrecy. Despite warnings from advisors, Charles chose to maintain his relationship with Savile, indicating a profound reliance on the man whose crimes would later be recognized as some of the most egregious in British history. Jimmy Savile's legacy is uniquely intertwined with nearly every major scandal involving child exploitation in the UK over the past half-century. His connections to government, healthcare, education, entertainment, and royalty made him a central figure in a vast network of abuse. Protected by institutions and individuals in power, Savile was allowed to operate with impunity, leaving an indelible stain on the nation's history. Jimmy Savile was a figure surrounded by mystery and suspicion, yet his public persona as a beloved TV personality and philanthropist concealed a much darker reality. Many who worked with him over the years described him as a loner with few true friends, despite his widespread fame. His colleagues, some of whom had known him for decades, stated that they barely knew him at all. Savile's aggressive, self-serving, and manipulative behavior was often feared by those around him. Psychologist Oliver James analyzed Savile's personality and concluded that he exhibited traits of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, projecting his own deep-seated issues onto vulnerable individuals. This starkly contrasts with the public image of him as a fun-loving, altruistic entertainer that generations of British children remember fondly. Savile's ability to wield influence and maintain his position for so long can be attributed to his connections and the secrets he may have held over powerful figures. He was reportedly involved in covert operations with security services and may have had leverage over key individuals in the establishment. He was knighted by the Queen in 1990 and even honored by the Pope, despite allegations surrounding his activities. These accolades, many argue, could have been seen as rewards for his silence and complicity in maintaining the status quo, especially given his association with individuals involved in morally dubious practices. In 2014, Time magazine published an article addressing the dark history of sexual abuse cover-ups in Britain, but mainstream media has often avoided directly connecting Savile's actions with the powerful individuals he was close to, including members of the royal family. While some have questioned Prince Charles's association with Savile, the issue remains clouded by media reluctance to draw definitive conclusions. The truth about Savile's influence and connections has been staring the public in the face for decades. It's clear that he was not just a rogue figure, but part of a larger system where powerful people, including members of the royal family, were linked to individuals with questionable behaviors. While some media outlets have suggested that Prince Charles's ties to Savile were due to naivete, this does not fully account for the complexity of the situation. It is well documented that figures like Lord Mountbatten, Prince Andrew, and others in the royal circle had close associations with individuals whose actions were far from above reproach. In his memoir, Noel Botham explored the dynamics of the royal family's inner circle, noting that Charles's early years were heavily influenced by figures with controversial sexual histories. Mountbatten, for example, was known for surrounding Charles with individuals whose behaviors would later be seen as deeply troubling. Prince Charles's relationships with individuals like Lawrence van der Post, a mentor who was later revealed to have had inappropriate relationships with minors, further complicates the narrative of his associations. It is not just Savile and Mountbatten who have been linked to problematic individuals. Other figures, such as science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke and even Prince Andrew's close ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, further highlight the troubling patterns of behavior within these circles. The royal family's relationship with certain individuals raises questions about the broader implications of these associations. Prince Andrew's involvement in the Epstein scandal has garnered significant media attention, and his ties to other known individuals with disturbing backgrounds have only added to the scrutiny. Despite his public denials, the consistent pattern of associations with individuals involved in criminal activities remains undeniable. The links between these figures, many of whom were involved in sexual abuse, paint a picture of a system where abuse was often tolerated or ignored for the sake of maintaining power and influence. It has been noted that certain British articles discussing Prince Andrew's connections with a couple involved in dubious activities in the 1990s and early 2000s prior to the arrest of financier Jeffrey Epstein are no longer available online. However, investigative journalist Whitney Webb, writing for Mint Press News, was able to access some of this disappearing coverage, offering a detailed look at events leading up to Epstein's 2006 arrest. Webb highlights how manipulative the situation surrounding Prince Andrew's involvement was based on insights from those familiar with the blackmailing duo, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, as early as 2001. A 2001 UK newspaper article even suggested that Epstein had business dealings involving prominent figures, such as Bill Gates. Epstein, often depicted in the media as a mysterious figure with vast wealth, was later revealed to have been involved in illicit activities, including money laundering for banks like Deutsche Bank, Citi, and HSBC. These activities were part of a larger, shadowy network involving financial transactions that were ultimately tied to Epstein's criminal activities. Given the extensive vetting processes of MI5 for anyone close to the British royal family, it is unlikely that Prince Andrew was unaware of the dubious activities surrounding Epstein and Maxwell. His involvement, alongside the fact that he had a long-standing relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, suggests that he was fully aware of the situation. The royal family's position of power and influence, which often shields individuals from scrutiny, has also been a factor in the lack of accountability for those involved in such networks. While Prince Andrew's reputation has been permanently damaged by these allegations, there remains uncertainty as to whether he will ever be held accountable for his actions. The global scale of the corruption involved, which extends beyond the United Kingdom, has made it difficult to bring those responsible to justice. In a 2003 article, the Evening Standard referred to Maxwell's rise to prominence, partly due to Epstein's financial backing, noting that Epstein only associated with billionaires or very young women. This connection between Epstein and Maxwell was further highlighted in reports suggesting that they had a long history with intelligence agencies, including the CIA and Mossad. Epstein's criminal operations were closely linked to a broader network of individuals, including figures from both the US and UK governments, as well as influential business leaders. The history of Epstein's connections to powerful figures, including his relationships with individuals like Alan Dershowitz and members of the Rothschild family, paints a disturbing picture of a network that spanned continents and decades. Despite the efforts of various authorities to distance themselves from Epstein, evidence suggests that many in positions of power were either complicit or directly involved in his illicit activities. In the years that followed, Prince Andrew continued to maintain close ties with Maxwell, who was arrested and convicted for her role in Epstein's criminal activities. Photographs from various events show the continued interaction between Andrew, Maxwell, and other individuals connected to Epstein's network, further underscoring the prince's ongoing involvement in the scandal. As the investigations into these matters continue, the question remains whether the truth will ever fully emerge and whether those responsible will be held accountable. In a 2019 interview with Vogue Arabia, Sarah Ferguson, the ex-wife of Prince Andrew, spoke out about the backlash her former husband faced after his controversial BBC interview. However, in her remarks, she seemed to give little consideration to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Ferguson described the intense scrutiny of Andrew as appalling and expressed sympathy for his enormous pain throughout the ordeal, portraying him as a victim of an unfair process. Meanwhile, in 2003, The Sun uncovered a photograph of Prince Andrew with former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, who was also linked to the Epstein scandal. This image raised further questions about the prince's associations, as Virginia Giuffre has claimed that Epstein forced her into sex with various prominent individuals, including those pictured with Andrew. The photograph reportedly shows both men at Epstein's ranch in New Mexico, adding to the concerns surrounding Andrew's connections to the convicted sex trafficker. In addition, revelations surfaced about Andrew's financial dealings. After being removed from his role as the UK's trade envoy in 2011, he was linked to multiple investment companies operating under the name Andrew Inverness. This raised suspicions that the prince was attempting to shield his financial dealings from public scrutiny. Despite his removal from official duties, reports in late 2019 revealed that Andrew had accumulated a substantial fortune of £57 million. This wealth, however, raised questions, as it seemed disproportionate to his public income sources, which include a modest naval pension and the allowance he received from the royal family, which was allegedly withdrawn following his removal from royal duties. Prince Andrew's lavish lifestyle has led to further controversy. His spending habits raised legal and ethical concerns, especially as he continued to live far beyond his means despite limited official income. Questions also arose about his connections with wealthy individuals, such as David Rowland, and his alleged use of private wealth management firms to obscure his financial activities. Prince Andrew's tenure as a royal ambassador was marked by controversy, particularly in his interactions with world leaders, many of whom had questionable human rights records. For example, he was criticized for his ties to oppressive regimes in countries like Tunisia, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan. Furthermore, documents from WikiLeaks revealed that Andrew's arrogance and disregard for diplomacy had caused embarrassment to the British government during his time as trade envoy. The prince's reputation took another hit in 2019 following his ill-fated BBC interview, where he attempted to defend his friendship with Epstein. His answers were widely seen as evasive and disingenuous, leading to his forced withdrawal from royal duties. His behavior also sparked a public scandal surrounding his finances, which were scrutinized as part of the broader investigation into his connections to Epstein. As Prince Andrew faced increasing isolation, his birthday celebration in February 2020 was notably underattended, reflecting his fall from grace. With the ongoing fallout from the Epstein scandal and the public's disillusionment with his actions, the royal family struggled to contain the damage to their reputation. Meanwhile, Ghislaine Maxwell, a close associate of both Epstein and Prince Andrew, remained a significant figure in the story. She was linked to various high-profile individuals and organizations, many of whom had connections to the prince. Maxwell's role in the Epstein scandal and her attempts to avoid prosecution have kept her in the media spotlight. In the years following Epstein's arrest, Maxwell has maintained a relatively low profile, though her connections with Andrew and others have continued to attract scrutiny. Prince Andrew's associations have attracted significant public attention due to his connections with individuals such as Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, who have been accused of serious criminal activities, including sex trafficking. In the years following Epstein's arrest, multiple reports have raised questions about his interactions with high-profile figures, including Andrew. While Andrew has denied any involvement in Epstein's crimes, the media have continued to scrutinize his associations, especially after Epstein's death in 2019. Notably, Prince Andrew has been linked to several individuals with controversial histories. For example, Kevin Spacey, who faced allegations of sexual misconduct, was reported to have visited Buckingham Palace in the company of Ghislaine Maxwell, one of Epstein's associates. Spacey and Prince Andrew have been connected through mutual friends, including Epstein, which has raised further scrutiny of Andrew's social circle. Furthermore, Prince Andrew's relationship with convicted sex offenders such as Jeffrey Epstein and other prominent figures who have faced allegations of abuse has led to public questions regarding his judgment and connections. There are also reports that certain individuals within his wider circle have been involved in controversial activities, such as Ex-IVM, a group accused of running a sex trafficking operation. These links, particularly with wealthy figures involved in criminal cases, have fueled speculation about Andrew's role in these networks. Despite the controversy, it's essential to recognize that accusations and associations do not necessarily confirm wrongdoing. Prince Andrew has denied any illegal activity or personal involvement in Epstein's criminal enterprises. However, the ongoing public interest in these matters suggests a need for continued investigation and transparency regarding the relationships and actions of public figures. especially those in positions of power. Dear friends, we will continue this highly controversial disclosure in our next video. What is the most shocking claim that you have learned from this narrative? Let me know in the comments section below. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in our next video.